All right, I'll do a little introduction. My name is Elise Fry. I am the Test Administration and Formative Assessment Specialist with the Utah State Board of Education. And today we are going to be going over UTIPS, which is a formative tool that is provided for anybody to use in their classrooms. So to kind of give you an overview here, we're going to look at UTIPS as a way that it can be used as a formative tool, how we can create and edit assessments, and then as well as how to analyze and view the reporting. So then you'll be able to go back and share that information with any appropriate audience in your building, and then be able to provide any needed support with teachers as they're working with it. And again, at any time as well, you are welcome to contact me if you have questions. As we go through the training, if you have questions, you are welcome to drop those in the chat. Kim Rathke is here as well to monitor. You can also feel free to come off mute. There's not a large group, so it can be, it's not very intimidating. So if you want to come off mute with questions, you're welcome to do that as well. So UTIPS is a Utah-owned and teacher-created item bank that has all different types of items that you can select from. For example, multi-select, hot text, drag and drop, matching. You can do cluster items to mirror some of the science stimuli where you're provided with lots of various pieces of evidence, and then there are questions to answer to go along with that. Again, this is available for K through 12 teachers and their students. And just as a heads up with our UTIPS, there's a wiki site that is available that has great step-by-step how-tos, little articles that you can follow along step-by-step with screenshots, as well as frequently asked questions. So that's a really great place to go if you're just looking for something really quickly. Understand that it works with an updated web browser. So desktops, Chromebooks, mobile devices like an iPad are totally fine. It's pretty user-friendly on just about any system or platform. UTIPS also loads through Utrex, which means that when your teachers have an account, as long as everything is flowing properly, their classes are going to auto-populate for them. And so with that sync to work, you just need to be aware that the teacher's Cactus ID number that's associated with their account needs to be in the account updated, as well as the system-wide username and SIS name. Those have to be the same. If your teachers are having trouble with the sync, that's actually a really great place to look, is just go double check their account, see if their Cactus number has been entered, and then see if the username and the SIS name match. And I'll show you a screenshot of what that looks like in a slide or two. You'll need to also add your LEA from the drop-down menu, and the teacher role needs to be added. If it's just sharing teacher, the data isn't going to sync, so you need to make sure that teacher is also added. A couple of things to be aware of with UTIPS, though. It's unavailable roughly the first 3 days or so of school, just as the sync is working. That transfer of information takes some time. But be aware, if you have any classes that switch at the semester or at the trimester, those are also going to take a few days after that rollover to update.
Elise, you have a question? How do we create accounts for teachers?
We're going to do that very next. I'll show you how to create an account for a teacher. And if you ever need help creating accounts for teachers, I can also do that as well, or walk you through the process. So when you go to create an account or to create a test, you are going to log into your school's UTIPS site. Your site is generally your school, charter, or district.utips.org. But if you're not sure, you can actually locate that on the statewide UTIPS URL link that's on the wiki. I've also linked it here in the presentation if you're not sure how to access your school's specific site or your district's specific site. When you go to create a teacher account or to search and see if a teacher has an account, you are going to use the search users link that's there on the left-hand side that sits under configuration. And to search to see if a teacher already has an account, You can just search by first and last name. You can see here I've put in mine. It says Elise Fry. You can also search by cactus number. If there's an account, it will eventually show up. It does take it a while to go through all of the sources. When it's done, it will say 0 results or 1 result or 2 results to kind of give you an idea of what you'll see when you type something in there. But if the teacher has an account, you can update it either with their more current email address, or if their school district has changed. And if there isn't an account, you can create one, and I'll show you how to do that next. What if I don't have an account as an LEA? If you don't have an account as an LEA, send me an email and I can do that for you. So to create a teacher account, the first thing you'll need to do is find your organization. So you're going to find your district or your charter. After you've logged in, find your LEA, and then click over on user accounts, and you're going to add a new one. You can see that there's the little green plus button above the new or next to the new, and you can click down to teacher. And then to create that teacher account, it is going to ask you for user information. Now, this is where the username and that SIS login, those two fields need to match, okay? Generally, I just use the first part of somebody's email address, but you can do a first initial last name because sometimes with a very common name, that username might be taken and so it needs to change. But just make sure that the username and the SIS match. After that, you'll click over to the drop down, and you can see my little fake drop down there that says Zizix Teacher SIS. You'll find your school's SIS, select it, and then enter the teacher's cactus number. By entering the cactus number, that is going to allow that sync to occur so that the classes will auto-populate. When it comes to setting a password for the teacher, general rule of thumb that's really easy. When I'm creating a teacher account, I just set the password as change me, just one word. And then I click that little box underneath that says force password change on next login. That will make it so that the teacher can just type in the change me, and then they can select whatever password suits them for that particular setting. You'll put in the teacher's first and last name. You'll put in the email account that's associated with their school. And then you can see it automatically auto-populates with the teacher membership that you've assigned it. But if you want to grant a different permission to that teacher, you can also do that with that little green plus button. Biggest thing to remember when working in UTIPS is to click that little save, the little earth save, because UTIPS will allow you to close the application without hitting save. So just make sure to hit save so that it saves all your changes before moving on. That if you don't, it's not going to be there, and it's not going to prompt you with the, are you sure you want to close this because you haven't saved things? So just kind of be aware of that. Do you have any questions about adding teachers?
No questions about teachers, but somebody just asked if they didn't have an account as an LEA assessment director. I just said, send you an email.
Yeah, send me an email and I can set that one up for you. Okay. All right. So as an LEA, you can stay on top of enrollment. Again, you won't have to worry about students, but if you have new teachers, think new teachers in your building, if you need to add those accounts, you can do that. Or if the account is created, again, you just have to go in and add the cactus ID so that it will sync. But those two things, just kind of be aware of those and kind of be watching for them. For enrollment codes, these are lesser used now, but just in case you want to use it for sharing assessments, or if one is generated for you, you can assign new roles to users using those enrollment codes, or it allows for assessments to be shared between teachers. And you would just enter that enrollment code and apply it under settings. So now for the fun part, for creating assessments. So when a teacher signs in, it's going to bring them to a dashboard where they can create assessments as well as access assessments that have already been created by them. So from there, they would click into the tests panel and you just click the little add new. There are two options there. There's assessment and there's folder. I'm going to show you how to create assessment, but just as a note, the folder is also there if you want to organize your folders within your account. For example, if an elementary teacher is using this, they might have an ELA folder and they might have a science folder and they might have a math folder. If I'm a secondary teacher and I teach multiple subjects, I might have a Math 7 folder and a Math 8 folder just to keep my assessments organized a little more friendly for my own usability. So if I'm going to create an assessment, I click that little green add and I select assessment. From there, it's going to have me fill in some information. The first thing I need to do is give my test a name. So you name the test, and then underneath that, it has an availability box. And this is a really important one to not overlook, because if students log in and claim the test isn't available for them to take, odds are that little make assessment available box has not been checked yet. It's a quick and easy fix to go back and log in and click that, but just make sure that teachers are aware that little box has to be checked or students aren't going to be able to view the assessment that they've created. The really neat thing about this availability option is it does allow you to restrict availability to a certain time and to certain days. So if you're a secondary teacher and you only want your test available during your second period, you can set the exact times for it to be open and available, and then it won't be available after the time has passed. Same with the restricting to certain days of the week. The next thing that it will have you do after you've filled out the name and its availability is you have the option to provide feedback. You can show immediate feedback, meaning that it's going to show the student a score immediately once they hit submit. You can also take that permission away so that no score is shown and that you're the only one who will see them. Another neat feature under feedback is you can click the option to allow students to re-answer a missed item for partial credit. So if they miss it, it will tell them this is an incorrect answer, but they can select another one for partial credit. So you have that option if you choose to. The next component of the overview is the scoring. You can show the score as points or as a percentage. And then you can also allow students to take the test multiple times. If you only want it available once, you don't have to check that box. But if you'd like it to be available as a retake, you can click it, or you can click unlimited. I know that there are some CTE teachers that will use this for their safety test at the very beginning of the year, and the student has to get 100% before they can move on. And so they select the unlimited times option so the student can take it as many times as needed. Along with scoring, you can set a competency percentage to your liking. You can set it higher or lower depending on if this is a pre-assessment or a post-assessment. You can also set the timing if you'd like students to be able to limit the amount of time that they're able to access the test or to take the test. You can allow for a set of instructions to be displayed prior to taking the test if you choose to. You can also put notes to yourself about the assessment in a little box. And then by that point, you kind of set up your test in the way that you want it, and you can then create the test. And there's two options here. You can either click the little box down here at the bottom that says item pool, add items from item pool, or you can create your own. I'm actually going to show you how to do both. Just understand that if you are adding items from the item pool, the pool has not been updated for a long time. It hasn't been updated actually since 2014, and its last review for standards alignment was in 2016. So you'll want to ensure that teachers are reviewing items if they're using any from the bank, just to ensure that they connect to current standards and that it's appropriate as far as being connected to what the teachers are actually teaching and what students should be learning. The other option is to create your own. The other cool thing to be aware of is that you can go back and edit these or change them at any time. So for example, if I use the create my own assessment option and I add 5 questions, but I really want to go add something to the bank afterward, I can just click back to that overview tab and go down and I can add items from the item bank after if I chose to. I can also still create my own. So the tests are still completely editable after they've been created. So we're going to start with adding items from the item pool. If you choose to add them from the item pool, this box is going to pop up and the USB item pool will autofill. After that, the teacher has the option to select the subject, the grade, and the standard that they want to be pulling items from. And after they select that, they can choose how many items from particular standards they want. So for example, I just chose a Math 6 item here, and I want it to focus specifically on the geometry strand. And I can see that there are 86 items in the item bank that relate to geometry. And so I've just asked that there be 15. And then if you look down at the standards 1, 2, 3, and 4, I can then prioritize how many I want focusing on each standard. You can also see that some standards are more heavily represented than others. For example, standard 2 only has 1 item available. However, standard 1 has 42 items available. So you can kind of mess around with those numbers a little bit to your liking. If I'm going to create my own item, I'm going to click over to the items tab that's under overview. So remember, the overview tab was where we gave the test a name. We decided when it was available for students and how it would be scored. Items sits underneath. I can click there, and that's where I can view the items. That's also where I can create my own. Again, I draw attention to number 5, that little save, because you can close this without saving. So make sure you hit that little save. Something that's interesting though with the save option, if changes haven't been made to the document or to the item, that save button is going to appear grayed out. You can see that there are items here like results list, score distribution that are grayed out because they're not available for this particular section. That save button will also appear grayed out if you haven't made any changes. But if you see that little earth turn blue with the green arrow, it means that there are items that need to be saved before moving forward. So to create your own item, you would just click on the items tab and then go up to add new and then select the type of question that you want to build. Again, note that there are grayed out items, meaning that those ones are not available. We're going to go through each different item type as well so you can see what these look like. So for the single select multiple choice, this is by far the most popular, most common type of question that is created through UTIPS. They're very easy to check. You just type in the question that you want, you type in the answers, and then students click the bubble for their desired answer. Pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. It differs a little bit with the multiple choice multi-select. So this one, you can see in my example here, I've used a Science 6 example asking my students at which positions the day and night hours will be equal in length. So there's a hint for them with the little positions that they're going to be multiple answers correct. The other hint, if you can see the answers there, they're boxes now instead of bubbles. So the boxes are also a hint to my students that there's going to be more than one correct answer. And then students would be able to select multiple options for their correct answer. The matching question will appear like this. It uses drop downs to pick the answer which best matches the item stimulus. So you can see here the question says match the fashion to the decade it was popular. And we can see flappers as being the first choice. The drop down is going to have the 1920, the 1940, the 1950. And until the student selects it, you can see down the last two options there that say choose answer. That's kind of serving as a prompt for the students that they can click that little box and then their options are going to show up. So they can match the one to the correct question. The next one is short answer, or like a fill in the blank. With this one, you can see the example that I've given here says, John has 4 out of 5 problems right on a test. What's his percent correct? 80% is what you would be looking for to put in. However, when you are creating your key, you'll want to make sure that you put in as many correct answers as you possibly can so that the system will score it properly. So for example, I've put down here in parentheses, I might have 80% with the numbers and the symbol all together. I might have 80 and then a space with a percent because students might do that. I might type out 80%. I might use 80 numerically and type out percent. You have to get creative and think how your students are going to respond. Just know that if there is ever a discrepancy and you notice that a student has given a correct response, but you maybe didn't use that response as an option, you can always go in and override the system to mark that answer correct as well. The second option here with the open response, you can do an essay. With these ones, they don't count in initial scoring. You have to actually go in and manually score these. So when it comes to an essay, I might put a plugin here to use Utah Compose because that does have some immediate scoring opportunities where UTIPS doesn't have that capability. But it is there if you want to use it. It will provide a text box for students to type in. And then a little bit later in the presentation, I will show you how you can review those student responses if you choose to use that option. The other options we have the file load or essay and file load options. Again, these responses need to be manually scored after the submission. You will be able to, when students answer these, they'll be provided with a box to type their text in, and then they can also upload a file. So you can see I've provided evidence here that says triangle evidence to upload. Any evidence that was uploaded from a student's computer hard drive or from like their Google Drive can be provided, but I still have to go in and score those manually, but I also will be able to click on that link to see what evidence was provided. The last type of question option we have is the group, and these are the cluster items. These have become a lot more popular, especially in science, because it will provide all of the information or stimulus items in one block and have multiple questions that relate back to that stimulus. Again, with those questions, they're the very same ones that have been listed above. It's just allowing you to provide information in bulk almost to go along with a set of questions. So to do that, the cool thing with this is when you go to add that, you can see my little 1, 2, 3 here. Up at the top box, you're going to place any required text or image that's going to be used for the cluster questions. Know that you can also add images, hyperlinks, various things like that. And I'll show you how to do that as well in the next slide. But you can provide all of that information here. And then below that, you will provide the questions that go along with that stimulus. And they're numbered below. Again, all of the varied questions that we've already looked at become available options here. So you can do a matching question. You can do a short answer question. You can do multiple choice, single select, and multiple select. And you can provide as many questions as you'd like to go along with your stimulus. When it comes to adding media, again, you could add images, hyperlinks to any questions or answers, whether it's a cluster style question or not. To do that, you just type any of the accompanying text that you want into the top box and then add your media that you want. Just know that there's just a little quirk on this page. The media option, which is this little image right here that says upload media, that doesn't actually appear until you've clicked your cursor into that box. So just know that if all you see is the f of x function option here and it stops, It's not broken. You just need to click in the box and then the option to add your media will appear. If you don't like the media that you have included, if the image is too big or it's too grainy, you can immediately delete it just with a backspace or delete button. It comes out really quick and really easily. For adding hyperlinks to web pages or to videos, you would create your question, and then just like in an email or in a Word document, you would highlight the text that you want to become the link, and then enter the URL that you want the students to be able to be taken to, and click OK, and it's that simple. Again, you can delete those at any time. Do we have any questions so far on adding questions or types of questions? Just the building assessment process. Not seeing anything. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to go over with you is how we can edit those items. So I'm going to I have one open in UTIPS currently. I'll drag it up here. So I've clicked just right here on this practice test, and I want to edit something. For example, question number 1 says, what's the best estimate for the volume of this triangular prism? And I've clearly made a mistake with my question here because this is not a triangular prism. This is a rectangular prism. So it's really easy. You just have to click on it, and notice my little media box came up. And I can highlight my triangular, and I can change it to rectangular. I can also add an option if I want to add another one. If I don't like it, I just click the little garbage can to delete it. The other neat thing you can do, if you notice these little arrows, I can move the order of the answers. I can also move the order of the questions. So if you wanted things presented in a particular order, it's a simple drag and drop. The other thing I can immediately notice from this test is I have question 2 and 3, which are nearly identical. And if I didn't like question number 3, because it was multiple choice and I want it to be a little bit higher level, I like number 2 because it's the same question, but it says explain your thinking and provide evidence. I can just click that little garbage can and delete that item, and it won't appear on my final test anymore. The other thing to be aware of when you're looking at these, you can see over here on the right-hand side, it shows you which standards or strands the questions have currently been linked to. Any questions about editing or what you see like within this UTIPS system while I have it open here on this page? Okay, and we'll move it out of the way and come back. All right, so I've created my test. Now I need my students to take it. So I need to assign participants. So from my tests, I'm going to select the test I want to give, and then I need to locate the participants tab. That one's the one actually right below items. You can see on this little screenshot here. Overview was where I gave the test a name, its availability, how I want it scored. Items is where I created them or added them. Participants is granting the opportunity for students or other members of my organization to take the test. So that will open up a new window where I can add teachers or students to do that. And you can see the little blue add hyperlink next to any group. So for example, in the first screenshot, you can see the class or the school would say Utah Education Network. Underneath it, there are 3 students that I can add. I can also add 1 admin. Your students are going to appear underneath there with their names. So that's the other nice thing. You can select all of your students or you can select just a few. Note the little gray triangles though to the left of the individual classes, as you may need to drop that down to see which participants are available. The other thing that you might want to do is add yourself as a participant. If you need to do a whole class demonstration, especially just to use the system, you could teach students how to use the system and answer questions before even administering a UTIPS test. For students to then access your test, they're going to use the very same statewide UTIPS URL link that we talked about earlier. It's either your district, school, or charter name at utips.org generally. If you're not sure, the link is provided there. That list is also on the wiki. For their login information, the student username is their SSID, and then their password is their last name with the first letter capitalized. And for students who have a hyphenated last name, you would generally see it with last name. It would still be capitalized. The first last name is capitalized, but the one after the hyphen is not. So if you have a student who's struggling with that, just try the second last name without a capital letter. Teachers can also look up SSID numbers if they need to. If students are not aware, they would just go to their organization, find their grade and school, and then click over to user accounts. And you would see the student name and the SSID next to it. So that's how students go in to take the test. When it comes to reporting, when you're going to go in and look at your results, from your main page, you would select the test that you are looking to review. The thing that's really nice from there is it also tells you how many results there are. So if you look at my example screenshot here, you can see that the eValley math test only has one result. So I want to be looking at my one with 19 results that has a little bit more. After your results list, there are multiple options also listed below. And we're going to look at them individually, but there's score distribution, item report, as well as standards mastery. All things that can help you review your data. So the first thing we're going to look at is the results list. And when I click on the results list from that test, I can see the students who took my test. I can see their score. I can see their percentage. If there are any unscored items, those will appear, and I'll show you a couple of those in just a second here. I can see what day they took the test, what time they took the test, as well as how long it took them to complete the test. Because as a teacher, it can be very, very valuable to know if your student took the test in 2 minutes or in 27 minutes. So that information is provided there. I can also drill down to an individual student and their responses. Now, I mentioned on the last slide, if there were any unscored items, this is how they will appear. There will be a blue link in that column. So you can see that there are unscored items for 3 of my students, but the top 3 students don't have any unscored items. I can export this information to a CSV or a TSV file by clicking the export option. Okay, I can also delete that response. You can see next to Dan Demo up at the top, next to that name, there's a little garbage can on the left-hand side. I can delete that entry entirely so that it's erased from the system. If I want to drill down to an individual student, for example, we're going to look at Joyce Hall here. So I've selected Joyce Hall, and I can see she got 7 out of 10 or 70% correct. Another box is going to open, and you can see that at the top, there's a title, and it says Results for Joyce Hall on Math 6, Ratio and Proportions. I can then click the little gray triangles because they serve as drop downs to show more detail because I can't see the entirety of the question. So for example, here on question number 2, I can see that she got it incorrect because her C is highlighted kind of in a pink color. And I can also see that her score is 0. So if I want to see why she got that score, if I click that little gray drop down, it will show me the entire question as well as all of the answers that were presented and the answer that Joyce chose. If I feel like Joyce deserved to get credit for that, I can even override that score. So I can click on that 0 erase it, and put in a 1 to give full credit. I can also give partial credit. So if I want to give her half credit, I could put in a 0.5. When it comes to those unscored items, so here for Stan Sample, I'm going to click on that blue unscored items option that sits there by the name. And it's going to give me all of the items for review with a show option. So again, you can see with number 2, there's a link that says show. And that's going to provide me with the evidence that Stan included for his test. And I can score that accordingly. So that short essay example that I had shown you previously where I uploaded triangle evidence to upload, I can see the image that Stan had created and uploaded here. And I can then determine if Stan gets 1 point, half a point, a quarter of a point, however I choose to score it. Again, with this though, make sure that you click the save. I did leave this one grayed out so that you could see what that looks like prior to any changes being made. But if I go to give Stan that 1, that save button that you see at the top that is gray, the little earth will appear blue and the little green arrow will appear so that it kind of prompts me that I have unsaved changes that need to be saved. With the allowing students to re-answer, or if you're giving partial credit, just know that the point value will decrease with each attempt. So they get 1 point on the first attempt, they'll get half a point on the second attempt, they get 2/10 on a correct third attempt, but then they will get 0 if it wasn't correct on any of the 4 attempts. And so it will appear as the decimal for their scores. You can see that Debbie Demo here has a 2.5, which shows me that I might want to go in and look and see where she got partial credit on a question. The next tab we can look at after results list is the score distribution. And this is going to show you competency data that was previously set. So for this particular assessment, the competency was set at 70%. And I can click on those colored bars, the red, the yellow, and the green, and it's going to show me exactly which students fall into that category. So when I click on that yellow competency bar, it shows me that Amanda Burns and Joyce Hall got 70% or 7 out of 10. If I click on the green one, it's going to show me who was at 90% or got 9 out of 10. If I click on my red bars, it's going to show me which students got those particular scores. And then the next one we can do is the item report. The item report shares any data that's collected by the individual question. And you can click on the bar graph as well as other hyperlinks that are associated with the question. And it's going to show you the question and the answers as a breakdown. So for this example, I just clicked on question 6 as I looked at it and went, oh, most of my students did really well on question 6. I want to know who didn't do well on question 6. And I can see that 83% of my students picked the correct answer of D, but I had 17% of my students, which was 1 student, select the incorrect answer. It also shows me that nobody selected A or B. And if you look down below, I can see that Frank Ford answered with C incorrectly. So as a teacher, I can then take this information and go, I need to have a little reteach session with Frank on percentages. The other thing that I really like about this as a teacher, looking at this data, I'm really concerned about question 9 because it appears as though none of my students got it correct. So I want to review that question and see what may have happened and possibly even review that item as a whole class to clear up any instructional misconceptions that may have occurred when I was teaching initially. And then finally, our last tab to review for reporting is the standards mastery. And this shows individual student breakdown for each standard that was linked to a question on the assessment. So we can see here these little pie charts. This is linked again for Math 6 ratio and proportions for strand 1. And I can see that for strand and standard 1.1, Ken Avalos isn't doing well and neither is Frank or Paul. However, Michael seems to be doing great there. That it's going to fill in the little pie piece based on how they answered items that go along with those particular strands. Do we have any questions for reporting or how you can look at your scores? Any breakdown questions? Okay. All right. Here is my contact information. If you do have questions, you can email me. There's also my desk number. UTIPS also has a help desk, which is monitored by me. So your answers will come one way or the other. I've also relinked the UTIPS wiki there as well. We still have about 15 minutes of this window time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. If you want to come off mute or type them in the chat. Yeah, Cliff, I can share the slide deck. Any other questions? Or are you wondering if there's functionality that UTIPS has that maybe I didn't review? Why is a retake worth less points? Can I change this to full credit? Yeah, Blake, you can definitely change it to full credit. The retake functionality that I shared is, it would be not after the first submission, if that makes sense. Like if I'm a student taking the test and I get the question wrong, it's going to tell me I got it wrong so I can re-answer it sitting right there. But if you don't want that partial credit option in the overview, you would just not select the allowing students to re-answer the question, but you would want to make sure that your test can be taken multiple times. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. What do other major student assessments currently being given in Utah have that UTIPS doesn't? Cliff, that's a great question.
Because I'm just going to say, when I initially watched through this, I'm like, I wonder if I can replace out assessments in other areas with essentially building and routing things through here.
Kim's put in the chat computer adaptability. That's one of the biggest ones. All in all, UTIPS is a great system and works very well with just about any of them. But as far as, I should say, it provides the same functionality or very similar functionalities to some of our other platforms. What this does have that actually our other ones don't have is the capability for a teacher to create their own. And then we can't do any adaptive testing with UTIPS. Any other questions, wonderings? Okay, then I will give you back some time to your day. Oh, can they be printed? Yes, Whitney, they can be printed. Let me see if I can pull this back up for you so you can see it. So this is my test. There's just a little print option. And it will give me the option to print it. Does that help? Awesome. Okay. Yes, and Kim has put in they can be administered remotely because the UTIPS site can be accessed at anywhere at any time, as long as in your overview you haven't restricted availability. Students can take them at home. If you don't want them to take them at home, make sure you restrict availability.
Also, at least to answer Cliff's question, that Utah owns the system and the item bank, which is a huge bonus because we don't rely on an outside vendor in any way. However, it is not considered, because it is considered a formative tool. It is not a secure system that we could use for like required statewide summative assessments. It is not a replacement for RISE. It is not a replacement for Crossfire Plus. It is not a replacement for a Fabian Streaming or a Fabian Snap.
All right, thank you. I may still want to have a conversation with you again to go into a little bit more depth between each of some of those to see what the kind of gap separation is. I like to at least be able to identify that and have that recorded.
Yeah, you can do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm going to move this out of the way so that you have access to my email again if you need it. And if there are no other questions, you are welcome to jump off. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. Again, if you need help or need me to walk you through anything, give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to help you however you need. And you are good to go. You are welcome.